Hello everyone, my name is Kyle Mitchell. I'm the farm manager here at Bellwether Farm. We're a camp and retreat center and I manage the farm part of this camp and retreat center. So what I do is I grow a lot of food and I do programming and education on the farm, and I'm going to give you a little tour today of the farm, the greenhouse, the hoop house, the animal barn. We're going to meet some animals, we're going to see what's growing, and just want to warn you, this isn't the beautiful spring day I had hoped for. This is a polar vortex in May, so farm chores are going to look a little different, but you know, life doesn't always happen as expected. So this is sort of a polar vortex as portal today. Last night got down to 28 degrees, so I had to cover everything in my field. I had to even take off plants. I usually have plants up here on these tables getting ready to go out in the field. I had to put those on the ground. I had to cover those up with row cover. But it's part of farming. You have to adjust to the weather, and you have to take it as it comes. So I'm going to do a few chores this morning. Hope you'll come with me, follow me around, and see what we're working on. So welcome to the farm. Also, would like to introduce you to my wife, Lynea. We have been on this farming journey together for the past 9 years or so. I got started when I planted my first garden in the backyard. Planted carrots, right? Mm-hmm. Before I planted carrots, I hadn't really grown anything before. And we all have light bulb moments in life, and planting those carrots was one of those light bulb moments for me. Just realizing that food comes from the earth. Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't grow up on a farm. I just thought it came from the grocery store. So it was just this incredible moment, realizing that we could grow our own food. So after that, we decided to go on a farming journey together. We did a program called WOOF, which it stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, and that's where we really got hooked on farming and on food, on growing food and sharing it with others. That's sort of been our overall mission in life since then, is growing food, sharing it with others. So here's a whole bunch of food we've just uncovered. I don't know if you recognize any of these things that are growing.
Can you show us what some of the crops are?
Yeah, so these are, anyone have a guess? That's right, beets. So beets are a crop that you can direct seed outside, but I found it helpful to grow them inside in trays and then transplant them out, because sometimes you have trouble with germination. So if I grow them inside, I can pop them out and plant them, perfect spacing,
Show them up close.
about 4 inches apart. Here's what a beet transplant looks like. You can start to see the beets actually forming. They're ready to go outside, but the weather's not been cooperating, so I'm having to wait till next week. So I've got some beets. I've got some red beets. These are golden beets. What about these? I hope I have some gardeners here watching this with me. These are in the brassica family. I know you knew that. But what brassica are these? I don't even remember.
I think it's cabbage.
It is cabbage, correct. So I've actually put in about, 140 cabbage plants in the field already. Had to cover those up last night because it got so cold. But these are going to go out next week. They're ready to go out. I've also got some basil, parsley, what else?
Cilantro.
Cilantro for the herb lovers. Head lettuce. Got sunflowers that are getting so tall and leggy over there. They're so ready to go out.
Some peas and some flowers. These are all flowers. Poppies and alyssum.
Yeah, we love to grow tons of flowers on the farm for many different reasons. They're pretty, they attract pollinators, they also attract predatory insects that are helpful, beneficial on the farm. So these are mainly cold season crops, and over here I have a lot of my warm season crops that are, they'll probably go out in 3 or 4 weeks.
What's a warm season crop?
Oh, warm season crop. What is a warm season crop? Those are crops that have to go out after the last frost date, which I believe in our area is May 25th. This year, who knows, because we just had a freeze last night. So I'm waiting to put these out in the field until after May 25th. So I've got tomatoes. These are Brandywine tomatoes, slicing variety. And then I have a ton of cherry tomatoes. I love cherry tomatoes. They're one of my favorite crops to grow because they're so accessible. You can eat them right off the vine. I've noticed with kids, a couple of the favorite crops are cherry tomatoes, carrots, and
Sugar snap peas.
Sugar snap peas, yeah. So
How many tomatoes will one cherry tomato plant produce?
that's a tough question. I think tomato plants usually produce like 10 to 15 pounds per plant. If it's a healthy plant and you have good soil.
So cherry tomatoes, that's like hundreds.
Yeah. So we have actually hundreds of plants right here. So that's gonna be thousands of.
It's gonna be a good year.
It's gonna be a lot of pruning, a lot of trellising, a lot of harvesting. Luckily, I have some farm interns that are still gonna be able to come out this season, even with the pandemic going on. Farming has been one of the essential industries, so we've continued to work on the farm and almost go on as a normal year. We just have to sort of keep our social distance and wear masks when we're together, close up planting. But other than that, the farm is still going on as normal.
What's this one with the big round leaves?
These are in the cucurbit family, which includes squash, cucumbers, gourds, what else? Zucchini, and
Pumpkins?
pumpkins, watermelons. Yeah. I don't even know. I plant stuff and I forget, and it all looks similar. We've got a black zucchini. We've got a golden glory yellow squash. We've got what is this? Another Magda zucchini. And do you guys have any ideas for zucchini? Because we're gonna have a lot.
Need some recipes.
Yeah, we need recipes. We like to make zucchini bread.
Zucchini fritters.
Zucchini relish.
Put it in pasta.
Baked zucchini.
Oh yeah.
Fried zucchini.
Zucchini boats.
Zucchini raw, just right off the plant, out in the field. You don't even need to go in for lunch. Just eat a zucchini out in the field. Yeah, one of my favorite things about being a farmer and being a vegetable grower is just being able to munch on food while you're out working. All right, so
One cool
else?
thing about when it's all in the trays, they're mostly all green, except for some of the red ones. But then once they all grow up, you've got every color of the rainbow in all of these fruits and vegetables that are going to go out. So once they're out in the field, it's beautiful to look at because you've got all your deep purples, your deep greens, your light greens, yellow, red, orange, everything.
oh, one of my favorite crops. Where are they at?
Don't do that at home.
I think they're right here. Yeah. Shishito peppers. Have you guys tried shishito peppers? Fun word to say. Even more fun to eat. They look like hot peppers, but they actually I think it's 1 out of every 10 or 12 is hot. So it's kind of a game. So they're great roasted, little green red peppers. You can roast them, and they're normally sweet, but every once in a while you get a hot one. So that's one of my favorite peppers to share and to eat. Shishito peppers, check that out. So we call this a greenhouse. It's not insulated very well, but this is where we, like we've just showed, it's where we start everything. We have this boiler over here on the wall, and that is running radiant heat. It's running hot water through these tubes and going into the concrete, so we have heat coming up from the ground. And even in here we have heat coming up underneath the soil. And that helps us get everything started a little bit quicker. It helps keep the greenhouse a little bit warmer. And this particular area of the greenhouse I call the plant nursery. So it's like a kid's nursery. It's where you have the baby plants, you're babying them, you're taking care of them, you're growing them, and then once they're big and strong, they can go out into other parts of the field. This helps us just kind of extend the season a little bit. It gives us, we can have an earlier start, and we can have a longer season into October, November, when it's getting cold outside, getting into winter. And we can even keep things growing. They're not really growing too much, but we can keep them alive. Things like lettuce, things like spinach, things like carrots, we can keep them in the ground in here. We can be harvesting all winter. That's one of my goals, is to provide food for people, local food for the Camp and Retreat Center year round. Let's head into the other part of the greenhouse. All right, so this is probably one of my favorite parts of the entire farm. We just came on the other side of the greenhouse. And I'm a Floridian, I didn't mention that, and so this whole winter thing is still a bit tough for me. So, speaking of soul tending and Sabbath, this is probably the area that I like to come. I usually have a chair right here. I'll come out early in the morning, bring my coffee in a chair, and just do some reflecting. This is kind of the area that tends my soul the most, I would say, because I can come in here when it's 4 degrees outside and still see some green in the winter, which is really nice for me. So what we had to do last night with this weather is we actually had to we had our tomatoes tied up already, so we had to undo these and cover everything up. So it's 43 degrees in here, so it should be warm enough to uncover our summer crops. So I'm just inviting you to be a part of my morning chores this morning. Yeah, pull it tight. And if I find that these didn't make it, I apologize for the weeping. Let's see. Okay. All right. They're alive. Think we can get both of these? All right. So we made it through the night, which is a great blessing. So this is these are some of the summer crops that I have already planted in here. These wouldn't make it outside yet because it's a little bit too cold. Like I said, May 25th is when you get your summer crops out in the field. One thing that I really try to do here is utilize the space the best that I can. This is really, the greenhouse is kind of like the most expensive real estate. You know, we spent money to cover this plot, so I don't just want to plant one thing. So I'm trying to interplant different crops together. So what I have is tomatoes. These are cherry tomatoes going down the center, and these are a long season crop, so they're gonna climb up these strings all year. And actually, last year they climbed up and over the truss right there, and these will go all the way into November. This is interplanted with lettuce, so a few weeds here. This is head lettuce, so these will be ready in probably another 2 weeks. These are beets right here, planted in between. And these crops will be able to take in sun right now before the tomatoes get too big. So before the tomatoes grow into sort of like a tree, you know how a tree, this is really like modeled after the forest. I always get inspiration going to the forest and seeing how plants come up in the spring early, like the spring flowers, but then once the trees start to leaf out, they die back. But the main thing is that you're keeping your soil covered at all times. So I'm covering the soil with these early plants, so these will come out in a couple weeks. The beets will come out in about 3 weeks, and then the rest of the season the tomatoes will be growing huge and kind of cover this whole area. And eventually we'll start harvesting them once they get to about here, is when they'll start putting out their first fruit. But I wonder what some of your favorite vegetables are. Cherry tomatoes are definitely one of mine, and I love beets as well. Over here, have some similar stuff going on. Let's see. Does anyone know what this is? That is correct. It is a radish. I believe it's called... What was this one called? I planted 3 different varieties. A watermelon radish, a wasabi radish. This might be the watermelon. They're really good when they're young like this. You know, radishes get kind of spicy as they get bigger, but they're still like nice and tender. These still have a few weeks to go before I harvest them, but I should have a nice variety of radishes. And the same thing with the radishes; they'll come out soon, and then the tomatoes will grow nice and huge. Over here, I don't know if you can see that far, but we've got squash and zucchini. We've got some head lettuce over on the last row that's actually ready to harvest, and I'm going to be harvesting that this week. So even with the cold going on, we've got tons of life going on in here. I use a lot of, I try to use a lot of regenerative, they call it regenerative farm techniques, and it's a word that is becoming a little bit more popular. All of us are familiar with the word sustainable, which is also a great word. We want to have sustainable farming practices because we want to leave the earth better than we found it. But this word regenerative is something I think that is finding a lot of traction. It's sort of like if someone asks you about your friendship, how's your friendship, or how's your marriage, and if you're like, yeah, it's sustainable, doesn't quite have that powerful ring to it. So we want farms, we want landscapes, we want families, we want churches, we want organizations that are not just sustainable, but regenerative. They're life-giving.
Thriving.
They're thriving. What other words?
Thriving versus surviving.
Thriving versus surviving. Yeah. Those words kind of have more power, I feel like, to inspire us. So I don't actually till in here, so radish. So one thing I do in here is I just will use like a garden fork to loosen up the soil. So we just pulled out a crop right here. This was, what was this? Some kind of kale. I had kale over here. So I'll just clip the stems at the bottom. And this is like something you can do on a garden scale as well. Is you cut your old crop at the soil level and then just add compost on top. And this helps preserve the soil. And that's one of my main goals out here, is to preserve life in the soil. I mean,
Here's some of the old roots.
yeah. So kind of just building on top of the clay soil out here with compost. And I'm getting ready to plant more tomatoes on this row and then cucumbers in the last row. So what is in these garden beds over here? Do you remember?
Over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have parsley, and this is always flowers and herbs all the way down, but we haven't planted it out yet because of the cold. But we've got a big chunk of parsley that stayed over the winter. We have, this is called borage blue. It's, the purple flowers are edible. I'll show you some. We like putting these on, I don't know how close to get. We like putting these on salads, and they kind of taste like a cucumber. We have echinacea, cilantro, and more of the same. Oh, some nasturtiums and black-eyed Susans. So will you tell us the purpose of that bed?
Yeah.
For the pollinators?
So it's not even really planted up yet. But this is sort of like my pollinator row that I want to surround this area with, to invite pollinators, to invite predatory insects that help keep the garden in balance.
And critters.
And critters, yeah. It's also just a row of beauty.
The little guy.
And this is something that I'm trying this year that's new, is this is a praying mantis egg sac. So praying mantises are one of the, is it praying manti? Praying mantises? Praying mantids? What's the plural of praying mantis?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Maybe you know. This is something I've never tried before, but I've heard that it really helps keep the aphid population down. If you're a gardener, you know aphids are a perennial pest. They're the oldest known, I hate calling them pests. They're just a bug, but they eat plants that we also want to eat. So praying mantises feed on aphids. So I've released hundreds of praying mantises in here already. So they're getting busy doing their work, contributing to the farm.
Which is another reason to always have something in your soil, because it creates that habitat for all the beneficial insects that you want to live here. I was looking for our toad. We have a greenhouse toad that lives in here, but when he stays still, he looks like dirt. So I couldn't find him for you.
Yeah, toads are a gardener's friend. They can eat up to 10,000 slugs in one season. Slugs are another one of those bugs that munch on our plants. So this is more of like a holistic, I love taking a holistic approach, thinking of the farm as an ecosystem and trying to create a biodiverse environment where we can have toads and ladybugs and snakes and praying mantises along with all the other garden bugs. And this is sort of like the epitome of that biodiversity, a row of flowers and herbs to create beauty, to create a hospitable place for butterflies and bees and everyone to come and enjoy this space. All right, we've moved on into the barn area, and I don't know about you, but animals are so important to our lives, and we've got a lot of animals out here, and they're really important for the life of the farm, and even there's a dynamic relationship, and there always has been, between animals and vegetables and fruit, because we use animal manures to grow our crops. Oh, hi. And so I'm going to introduce you to the animals that we have on the farm and tell you a little bit about how they... well, we have a herd of sheep and goats here at Bellwether. These are some of our goats. This is Lucy. She's kind of like a pet, actually. She was bottle fed as a young goat, so she's very friendly, sort of like a dog. We have a couple different breeds. Billy is a Nubian, so a milk goat breed. Lucy's a boar goat, so typically a meat goat. And I don't know if you knew, but goat is actually and you may be vegetarian, you may be vegan, you may be a meat eater. I don't know who's on this call, but it's interesting that goats are goat meat is the most eaten meat in the world, just as a trivia, because places in the Middle East have tons of goats, tons of sheep. I guess people are more used to cows here in the U.S. We don't have any cows on the property. But one thing, animals bring us these different, we say products, and I really don't like thinking about animals as products, but as partners in the work of life here on earth. So I guess not only are they bringing us eggs and milk and meat, but they're bringing us companionship. They're bringing us joy and partnership and shared work. And they bring so much laughter as well, especially with groups that come out here. I'm just looking at Onesta here. She has a beard, and her beard got wet and it is frozen. It's just hilarious. These are Onesta's two kids that are about 6 weeks old, right? 6 weeks? Yeah. And the goats are just so lively, so friendly compared to the sheep. I prefer the goats personally. The sheep I've yet to successfully
Bond with,
yeah.
Did they come in yet?
I don't know.
The ram came and then
we can try to
ran away.
We can try to get the sheep in here.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh.
Billy, Eva, Lucy.
And I want to introduce the barn cat. This is Silo. If you have a barn, you know that you need to have a cat. You can get a lot of mice in the barn, and Silo's a really good mouser. We used to have tons of mice, and I haven't seen any recently. Let's see if we can get the sheep in here.
They're good.
So the sheep that you just saw come in and heard, they're a variety of hair sheep. So they actually have kind of like a mohawk right now because they shed every spring. So when you look around the field, you can see their hair just kind of like powdering the field. But they're a really hardy, good hardy breed of sheep. And the ram actually looks like our Bellwether logo. I think I have one on my hat. Looks like our ram. I don't know if anyone else explained yet, but the Bellwether is a term that comes from the Middle Ages. A sheep in the flock would wear a bell, and it was a castrated male they called a wether. And this wether would be sort of like the leader of the flock that had a bell on it, so it was the Bellwether. And wherever the bell went, that was sort of like an indicator of where the flock was going. So sort of like the leader of a flock. So we actually have taken our ram out into town in a parade once, had a bell on him, and we gave him lots of treats. So I think he did enjoy that part of it. But let's swing around. We've got some more animals to see. We have some young hens over here. Come on in, come on in. I hope you watching this are staying a lot warmer than we are right now. So this is our young egg layers. We got them when they were very tiny little chicks, and we raised them in here for about 4 months till they're ready to go out on pasture. We kind of baby them along. We have heat lamps in there. We keep them protected. I had to put up this cage because a small chicken is a very nice dinner for a cat. So had to keep the cat out. She tries to follow me in there sometimes, but I think now they're big enough to fend for themselves. They're almost ready to go into our mobile chicken coop, which I'm going to show you. But I think they have another couple weeks, and then they should start laying in probably 3 months, 2 or 3 months. We've got about 5 different breeds in there.
Can you catch one?
Catch one, yeah.
So you can see the size difference
Yeah.
between a teenager and an adult.
So this is a golden laced Wyandotte, a very pretty variety. There's also a silver laced Wyandotte that has like silver feathers. She's about, what did I say, 3 months old?
Yeah.
About 3 months old, so still pretty young. And not quite ready to be introduced to the flock. But we have about 40 new hens that we're going to add to our laying flock this year. We've currently have about 80 that are out in the mobile coop, getting about 50 eggs a day. So good amount of eggs that we use here at the Camp and Retreat Center. And it's sort of part of our daily life here is to, when groups are here, we collect eggs together. And we use those eggs at breakfast. And Chef Lonnie, who you may have met, does a wonderful job preparing all the food that comes from the farm. So, hello. Hi. Have you ever held a chicken before? Can feel her heart beating. And then sometimes you can actually like stick your arm out. I don't know if it's gonna work with this one. You wanna try? And they'll roost on your arm. Let's see. You got it? There you go. All right, let's say bye. This area over here it's kind of our lambing area. So when we have lambs and kids, we'll put them in one of these pens. We'll sometimes we even have to make more pens just so that each mother has a chance to bond with their babies. And they're out of the cold, they're out of the elements, and they really learn to relate, and they get a good start on life. But right now, everyone's out in the field.
Can you try to catch one of the babies?
Oh yeah. These baby goats, we haven't held as much, so they're not as friendly. Normally the baby goats are coming up to us and jumping on us and stuff. But it would be cool to see if I can get one of these. Hold on. Oh. Yeah. Oh. So this one is probably my favorite baby goat right here. Because she looks like an Oreo. Yeah, we haven't named this one, I don't think. What do you think we should name this one? I'm thinking like cow or Oreo. Or
cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. If you haven't held a baby goat before, you got to make your way out to Bellwether. It's kind of like therapy.
Climb all over you.
All right. The dogs are eating all the goat feed. All right. Let's go see if we can find some chickens. I need help with my chicken chores. All right, so I'm gonna work on my chicken chores today, so I invite you to help me out in spirit. This is our mobile chicken coop, so we move this around the field, and it's sort of like a mobile fertilizer. At the end of the season, I pull the chicken coop over all my vegetable plots and let the chickens clean up what's left and drop their wonderful manure blessings everywhere. And the thing about animals is they can be a huge blessing on a farm, especially if they're being rotated around. We do that with the sheep and goats. We move them through the woods and on the pasture. We move our chickens around. It's when you can find them in one area when their manure becomes kind of like a detriment. So this is kind of like old wisdom, is to incorporate animals into your farm with fruit and vegetables. And we're trying to really tap into that relationship out here. So I'm gonna let the chickens out and do some egg collecting this morning. And they're usually so excited to get out and do their chicken thing, find bugs and worms, and they even eat grass and weed seeds. They pretty much eat anything. They're omnivores. They're opportunistic. So they may be a little shy this morning because it's so cold.
How many do we have?
So we have about 80
In here?
80 in here, yeah. And one thing we've learned through our permaculture classes is to kind of look at different things on the farm and try to study their inputs and the outputs. They find a place and they scratch it up, and that's how they rub dirt and dust under their feathers. That's how they bathe, so they need a dust bath place. And then those are the inputs. Some of the outputs is, they provide eggs for us. They also provide fertilizer, as I said before. What else do they provide?
They fill up the ground a little bit with all their scratching.
Yeah, they can sort of be like bug control. As long as you're moving them around, they're improving the pasture instead of destroying it.
Feathers, if you want to make feather meal.
One thing that isn't always noted is that they provide endless hours of entertainment. That's important. So by letting them out and letting them free range, we're trying to really respect the chickenness of the chicken, is how one farmer puts it. Chickens love to be outside, they love to scratch, they love to forage. So I'm gonna let the rest of them hop out. I'm gonna go inside and see how many eggs we got for the day. I need help collecting eggs. Come on, follow me. Luckily, those of you watching don't have to smell. So this is where they come in at night to roost, and they also come in here to lay. One of the important things to do to keep the eggs clean is to try to keep fresh bedding in their nest boxes. Helps keep them a little bit cleaner. Normally they go out, they forage around for a few minutes and then come back in and start laying. But we have about 8 varieties out here, so we get these are the Easter eggers. They lay these like bluish green eggs. We got some white eggs, some sort of like, I would almost say like pinkish eggs. So we really get a nice variety. I love biodiversity. I love having variety, and I feel like having a biodiverse environment creates a stronger, more resilient one. So instead of 1 breed of chickens, we've got about 8. Let's see what's going on. Got some eggs in here. There's more under here.